Greetings, my scattered sisters and brothers in the Lord. Trust you're having a good day and that you know the Lord is with you wherever you are scattered. Today we are going to wrap up the story of Jesus healing the man who was born blind. And you'll recall that Jesus saw the blind man and that Jesus spit on the ground and made some mud and then smeared it in the man's eyes and told him to go and wash. And the place Jesus told him to go and wash, the name of that pool is called Siloam. And the word Siloam means sent. And there are three things I want us to kind of take note of as we wrap this up. We've already talked about Jesus seeing the blind man before the blind man could see Jesus. We've already talked about the disciples' question in terms of who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind. And Jesus' response that neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that this happened so that the works of God might be displayed. From that point on, Jesus goes on his way, and the blind man is walking around, and people are noticing that the blind man now sees. And so they're questioning him as to what happened and how can he see now. And some are even considering the possibility that he wasn't really the same person. And he assures them that no, he was blind and that Jesus had put some mud on his eyes and told him to go wash in the pool of Siloam and that he can see now. News of this gets to the Jewish leadership. And so the Jewish leadership examines him and interrogates him. And they're questioning as to whether he was really blind from birth. And they want to know how it is that he can see if he was blind from birth. And he faithfully reports that it was Jesus, that Jesus is the one who did this for him, gave him sight. And he even refers to Jesus as a prophet. The Pharisees are skeptical. They question the man's parents, and the man's parents say, well, we know he's our son. We know he was born blind, but how he can see, you got to go ask him. The parents did not want to give Jesus any credit because there was threats that if you were a follower of Jesus, you would be put out of your local synagogue. They go back to the man and they ask him, and again, he gives the credit to Jesus. And he asserts that Jesus must be from God, must have been sent from God, because God only listens to the prayers of a righteous man, that if he weren't from God, he couldn't give him his sight. The Pharisees are really put off about this. The Jewish leadership rejects that Jesus is from God. And so they end up putting the blind man who now sees, they kick him out of his synagogue. So he's no longer welcomed. He's no longer considered a member. And eventually Jesus finds the blind man again. And the blind man comes to the place where he worships Jesus. He believes that Jesus is the Son of Man. He believes that Jesus has come from God, and he worships him. And meanwhile, the leadership, the Pharisees in particular, they're just all the more blind in terms of rejecting Jesus. So three quick things. Number one is the pool's name, Siloam, sent. That's really what this whole thing is about. Did God really send Jesus or not? And so, ironically, go wash in the pool named Sent. And what his eyes are open to is not just physical sight, but spiritual insight that Jesus has come from God. The blind man truly sees. That brings us to point number two. We see growth. We see growth in the blind man moving from not seeing to believing that Jesus healed him and referring to Jesus as a prophet. He sort of refers to Jesus as a rabbi, as a teacher, because he talks about being one of Jesus' disciples. We see him recognizing that Jesus has been sent from God. And then we see him worshiping Jesus. And so we have this growth, this kind of faith growth, if you will, from simply understanding that Jesus healed him to understanding that there's something special about Jesus, to actually coming to the place where he realizes that Jesus is worthy of his worship. The third thing, the Pharisees in particular, the Jewish leadership in general, they are also growing, but they're growing in reverse. That they are moving from unbelief to greater and greater unbelief, to where they are intensifying in their rejection of Jesus. So there's nobody stagnant in the story. That either you're growing in your faith in Jesus or you're growing in your rejection of Jesus. There's no one stagnant. And so, and it all comes down to the question, where did Jesus come from? If he truly came from the Father, then he is to be worshiped. And if he didn't come from the Father, then yeah, he's an imposter and he should be rejected. But the question is, where did he come from? And the irony is, the man who was born blind, his eyes are open. And so he's growing in faith and coming to recognize Jesus is worthy of our worship. And those who can see, those who ought to be able to discern, they're actually growing in their skepticism and their rejection of Jesus. How tragic. Wherever you're scattered today, that's the question. Where did Jesus come from? My prayer is that we're growing in the right direction, that we recognize that Jesus is worthy of our worship, and so we are living unto him, living, following him, living for him, and in so experiencing the life that he has for us. God bless, have a great day, and grow in the right direction.